January 15th, 2023, MechNRules uploads a video called The Impossible Has Been Done. In it, he showcases himself beating the expert map Infernal on round 300. This was the beginning of his series called Lucifer's Sanctum, where he beat 6 of the expert maps on his quest to defeat Lucifer. However, due to some complications, he had to end this video series early. I have decided to continue this series because it's been 2 years and I want a Lucifer's Sanctum episode 7, and I may as well make it myself. Although I wasn't sure if I wanted to continue the lore part of the series, and I decided to leave that up to you in the comment section. If you want to see me actually continue the lore with the squadron of monkeys defeating Lucifer, or you just want to see me beat around 300 on all the expert maps with dumb challenges, then say so below. However, for this, I am not going to be doing the lore, because Glacial Trail is the newest expert map added, and it wasn't in the original 10 that MechNRules was going to beat. A few things set Glacial Trail apart from the rest of the expert maps. The first one is that it is the only single lane expert map. Everything else has either 2, 3, 4, or more. And the second thing that puts it apart from the others is that it has an incredibly special gimmick that probably makes this map an expert map. After you place down a tower, every 10 rounds it will be frozen for 2 of those rounds. This means you are unable to select it, sell it, use its abilities, upgrade it, or do anything with the tower until it thaws out. The only exception to this is Ice Monkeys, meaning that with the Absolute Zero being one of the best towers in the game, due to this being an update 49, it is going to be an incredibly useful stall, as well as the Super Brutal being a debuff that is always active. With my towers being frozen for 20% of the time, that means I have to be very careful on the round that I place my towers, especially my Paragons and VTSG, because if I place them all on one round, then they're going to be frozen for 2 rounds, and then I'm going to have barely anything to defend what is millions of health, BADs and ZOMGs and DDTs. So most of my strong towers are going to be available for most of the time, meaning that I have a solid defense for every single round. However, there are some towers which will be very unfortunate to have frozen, such as my Navarch of the Seas, Izili, the VTSG, and some of my other very strong Paragons. Another factor that makes this map so difficult is the very small amount of buildable space. Yes, there is quite a big chunk of land and a big chunk of water where I can actually put towers. However, if I place boats or subs in the water or towers up the top, they are not going to be able to see the track because of the large blockage. This means that the amount of actually good spots is very limited, and I'll have to get creative with where I place my strong towers. However, with the ice freezing gimmick, farming is still quite the same. I get 2 200 banana farms, I then sell one of them to create a bank, I save up with the bank to create a Monkeyopolis. I get down some BRFs around the Monkeyopolis, as well as some druids to farm with their ability, but also to help defend with their vine attack. I also get down a sniper that will later be upgraded into an elite sniper, and yes, it cannot see the track, but I have towers that are going to be able to do that for me. Before gearing towards boat farming, I decide to finish my farming at the top of the map. I get down a Spirit of the Forest, I get the elite sniper, but I also save up for both a Monkey Wall Street and a Banana Central. This is going to get me a decent amount of cash. I also purposefully place down a Spectre on round 69, so that every round that ends with an 8 or a 9, it will be frozen. This is to make sure that I have the Flying Fortress up for hard rounds, like round 140, 100, and 200. On round 81, I begin the boat farming, and I make sure to place down the Trade Empire as well as all the boats that I have so far within the Monkey City's range. This is to make sure that they earn extra money, and since every dollar generated counts as 4 pops towards the Navarch Paragon, this is a very good way to both earn money and also pops for one of my strongest Paragons, because the Navarch has a hooking ability that can one-shot fortified bads. However, it is only allowed to be used twice per round, but since this is such a short track, I need every ability I can get, since the higher degree the Navarch Paragon is, the shorter the ability cooldown will be, and the shorter the ability cooldown, the more useful it is. This is going to be very helpful in the later rounds. Round 88, my farming setup is almost complete. I have a sniper army and a boat army down the bottom of the map on the land and water. I have my Monkeyopolis, as you can see there in the top right, but next to my Flying Fortress I have a Monkeyonomics. Why did I get this? Because every time I use its ability it earns me $10,000, but even better than this, I can invest money into the Monkeyonomics at the beginning of every round. However, If it's frozen, the money that I put in will still gain interest at the end of every round, even if it isn't making anything normally. This means that if I put in money into it and it gets frozen for 2 rounds, once it thaws out, I would have made money. Right now I'm farming pops for more than one paragon, obviously the boat, but also the wizard, NG, and ace paragons, as well as a spike factory in the back, but that's not really doing any damage, that's just a safety net. All 5 of these paragons are going to be the ones where I have spaced out the placements of the rounds on. This is because these are my 5 strong paragons. The wizard, with its metamorphosis ability, is absurdly good. The Spike Factory Paragon and the Goliath Doomship are DPS machines, the Nevarch has its hooking ability, and the Engineer has an overclock ability that is very useful when paired with the wizard or the Spike Factory Paragons. On round 153, I get down my degree 80 Goliath Doomship. This absolute powerhouse of a paragon is going to allow me to survive for at least the next 50 rounds. I am going to have to adjust for the rounds where it's frozen, however I can use those as an opportunity to get pops for my other paragons, because I need 16.2 million to get the maximum amount of degrees. I replaced the BRFs with Central Markets to buff my boats. I'm not sure why I didn't before, because Central Markets with Boat Army is clearly better than BRF. However, this is an acceptable mistake, and I will continue to farm money for the rest of my setup. On round 180, I get my degree 80 Navarch of the Seas. This is a huge boost to my DPS, mostly because now the Ace is not the only Paragon on the field. At all times, I will now have a degree 80 Paragon attacking the balloons. However, 40% of the time I will only have one Paragon up. This means that I need more Paragons to actually make my defense more stable. I also re-get down all of my boats because the Navarch of the Seas has a feature where, like the Trade Empire, it can buff the income of boats. On round 200 and 201, my Navarch of the Seas is frozen. However, on these rounds I can use Ezeli's level 20 Hex ability to one-shot the bads. As well as this, I can use my Goliath Doomship ability to also do enormous damage to them. On round 207, I have to sell some of my towers so that I can get down an Engineer on this round. Why this round in particular? Because this is the round where I have to place down the Engineer for it to actually freeze at the correct time. This is on purpose so that I can always have 2 other strong Paragons up when this one isn't, that being the Navarch and the Goliath Doomship, so whenever the Engineer is frozen, I can guarantee that the other 2 will not be. On round 219, after some Chinooking shenanigans, I get down my degree 80 Wizard Paragon, and I do the same for my Ninja on round 250. These are 2 very strong Paragons, the Ninja for its 25% reduction of health and bads, and the Wizard for its insane DPS, especially when paired with the Engineer Overclock ability. Now I have 5 strong Paragons on the screen, and the last strong Paragon I'm waiting on is the Mega Massive Munitions Factory. I'm also going to get the Boomerang, TAC, and Submarine Paragons, however they're all going to be my weaker ones, since the Submarine won't even be attacking and the Boomerang and TAC are just weak in general. On round 259, I finally afford my degree 80 Mega Massive Munitions Factory. This Paragon has been almost 200 rounds in the making, and finally, I have that safety net at the back of the map to catch any stray bads or fortified bads that somehow make it past this gauntlet of Paragons. Round 268, I afford my Vengeful True Sun God. I got it this early so that I could be able to apply the correct buffs such as U-Boost, Peerbrew, and Desperado, which will be useful. And on round 287, I get down a degree 54 Sub-Paragon. Why degree 54? Well, it could be a nice addition as like a damage tower. However, it could also be used to cool down my Navarch ability and Ezeli, and if I ever need it in a pinch, I can use its ability to do some serious damage to fortified bads. On the exact same round, I decide to afford my degree 80 Glaive Dominus and degree 83 TAC Paragon. That is all the Paragons I'm going to get in this run because stuff the Dart Monkey. Entering into the 290s, I had 9 Paragons, a good selection of tier 5s that I hadn't placed yet, and a few temples that I'd all gotten on the exact same round. Why? Because they kind of acted like a paragon. Since they weren't really getting buffed that much, I decided that them three together would provide okay damage. However, I decided to get them on the same round as the VTSG, which is not amazing, because that means the VTSG and my temples are out of action on the same round. I do think I've done an okay job at balancing out the placement of the round that the towers have been on. While there are improvements that could be made, I think I've done good enough. Out of all of these rounds, the one I was most afraid of was 297, because all of my temples, except for one, my VTSG, Ezili, and my Master Builder were all frozen. So that was a lot of my very strong towers out of action. However, thankfully, the Ninja Kiwi gods have blessed me with an easiest 297 any human has ever seen. It was just a few bads, which I can take care of, and it was like one fortified bad, which my Nabark just hooked in. Easy peasy lemon squeezy round. And after 6 hours of getting my frozen butt kicked by fortified bads, I finally reached round 300. I will say, looking back on this challenge, it was actually pretty fun to play, because unlike my regular do late game free play challenges on easy maps or intermediate maps, I actually did one on an expert map for once in my life, and this was actually really fun. It allowed me to truly challenge myself, especially with the 20% towers frozen gimmick. That provided a lot of hard rounds. However, as you can see on round 300, basically all of my towers are up, so it doesn't even stand a chance. And out of the entire 6 hours, I only had to buy and resell Ezili maybe 5 times. So if you farmed for a lot longer and had some better tower placements than I did, you might be able to get to 350. That's pure speculation though, because 300 was actually relatively difficult. I am looking forward to doing the other 5 expert maps, and Dark Castle is next. And wink wink nudge nudge, it's going to be limited space. Guess what you think the limited space challenge is going to be. Anyway, leave a like, subscribe, maybe, because I missed out on all of the summer views. It's been winter here in the southern hemisphere, and I have not been productive at all, and I am very sad. But yes, that's going to be it from me. Tell me if you want to add lore in the comments in the next videos, and I will see you next week with Dark Castle.